The European races. Europeans are the focal point of European ethnology, the field of human sciences identified with the different native gatherings that live in the countries of Europe. Gatherings might be characterized by common hereditary heritage, everyday language, or both. Their sharp division of European populaces into three fundamental components. Even more, their portrayal of these components as particular races, and most of their declarations regarding the more central limit and social worth of one of these races as contrasted and another may well have appeared to be alarming and problematic to the overall understanding public, and even to sociologists acquainted with the grouping populaces just along phonetic or political lines. Indeed, even perusers knowledgeable in ethnological legend discovered motivation to address whether the proof presented was adequate to legitimize the broad portrayal of racial characteristics, and one pundit sneeringly commented that the broadness of Lapouge's speculations was in backwards proportion to the factual premise on which they rested. A race is a party of people subject to shared physical or social ascribes in two orders, all around as saw explicitly by society. The term was first used to infer speakers of an average language, and from there to demonstrate public affiliations. By the 17th century, the term began to suggest physical, phenotypical, credits. Current science sees race as a social form, a selected ward on rules made by society. While partially subject to accurate likenesses inside social affairs, race doesn't have an inborn physical or natural importance. Societal beginnings and groupings of races have changed as time goes on, routinely including logical society orders that portray essential individuals reliant upon saw qualities. Even though there is an expansive logical understanding that essentialist and typological originations of race are illogical, researchers throughout the planet keep on conceptualizing race in broadly contrasting manners. Alpinid, red-norted, Borrelby, and Atlantid racial attributes. Most race stories had two characteristics. They bravely sought after open capacity and worked with what science saw as a locally available racial horrendous material. My assessment, like this, shows the presumption of the Blanchard and actor network theory that bona fide data impacts even politically dubious sensible outcomes, close by philosophical public and disciplinary bits and constant battles. Right when evaluations saw brand name types on the public locale of France, Italy, Finland, and undeniable Slav countries, their classifiers recognized them as open races, regardless, untouchables, consistently thought to be these, but not exactly as great. Despite the way that race-mined research projects were deductively unstable, with little requirement for or validity of observational getting, classifiers, other than, for the most part, apparent their country's allotted champion, made, laborer certified, or stunning genuine circumstances inside a typical all-around course of action of pseudo-canny race accounts, limiting themselves to translating these then again or insistently. Assistant, sensible, creative, political, and extraordinary discussions looked after speculations, while wise universalism and the standard present-day European experience bound them throughout the planet. Races played nations in race stories, yet likewise watched out for performers like the average trained professional or champion, and properties like civilization, endeavor, or custom in a social affair of modernization, helping with orienting disoriented tenants about their country's work in that dumbfounding correspondence. The Italian, Mediterranean, and French brachycephalic offered a serene standard, bigger part rule elective, socially supernatural at the apogee of liberal positivism. to the solid improvement of the Germanic Nordic, whose stock rose with neo-authentic nationalism. The Slavic brachycephalic mainly played on elitist Nordic energies of fear of degeneration through an evening out, zeroing in on the tranquil business, dynamic reproductivity, and sparkling destiny of workers or workers. Most various stories were hostile to progress concerning the pre-current classes of trying Germanic or steppe people of elevated status and laborers whose creates on the public soil made on a fundamental level unmatched inclination. Joining current may be with questionable conservatism and libertarian energy, with socially infuriating elitism. Nordic Germanicist race stories were particularly tangled and self-ruining. Fundamentally, all classifiers controlled the race cerebrum research structure. At any rate, changing the race recorded and especially the coordinated surface clearly of movement required and introduced sensational power inside the social gathering region that could give the public race a positive occupation concerning the sensible check. Since the general scholastic neighborhood on a single positive, irrefutable truth, unraveling inquisitive race strategies as either brief collections or potential new boundless guidelines like Broca's model, complete legitimacy for an ally race account just came from driving everything through the overall region. Philology, ethnology, and humanities all had a positivist occupation to make a sensible, bound together with a European race strategy. It improved the landmass's distinct, progressed nations and old gatherings into Indo-Europeans, sweeping and long heads, or, in the positivist prime of the 1860s to the 1900s, the three-race structure. In like manner, they coordinated the Slavic brachycephalic East against the Protestant Germanic dolichocephalic North, in race portrayals as in military plot. Despite how this French record 281 achieved overall power, Germans dispatched a Nordic obstacle, charming the more settled neighborhood, the Teutonist custom of British Anglo-Saxonism. German industrialization and 1870 unequivocally showed that the power and people were newly moved in the north, condemning ex oriente lux stories. From around 1890, as Italy, Russia, and a short period later Central Europe joined an expanding, unusual by and significant focus, it isolated, in a general sense, further on nationalist lines, kept up by Denneker's races and constrained by neo-genuine localism. Overall pressing element and the guaranteed assortment uncovered by exploring. A 19th century Finn had, in reality, a little piece of effect over his Celtic Slavic race, a vital bit of the overall plan, interfacing from Moscow to the Atlantic. Regardless, while an interwar Finn had obviously broad impact over his neighborhood East European race, its fate was unessential to Paris or London. Potential mixes of these groups categorized by the cephalic index and IQ by generation. A human race is characterized by collectively by individuals with a specific regular acquired highlights, recognizing them from different gatherings of individuals. All men of whatever race are presently ordered by the anthropologist or researcher as having a place with one animal group, Homo sapiens. This is another method of saying that the contrasts between human races are not extraordinary, even though they may show up. Some individuals who look white will have genetic markers showing that a more significant part of their new precursors was African. Some individuals who look dark will have genetic markers showing most of their new precursors were European. Of course. In the English-talking world, numerous terms for individuals of different multiracial foundations exist, some of which are derisive or are not, at this point utilized. Excuse me for a second. I'm okay. Hostile to foreigner thoughts in Europe, which areas of now affecting governments and parliaments, or polluting the position taken by conventional gatherings, in about 20 European nations, has resurrected old accounts about public or European personality, making political capital out of it by likening variety with threat, fueling fears about a marvel that is unavoidable. As the United Nations brings up, individuals will continue moving. What is more, from a segment viewpoint, it is fundamental that they do. If it were not for relocation, some European nations would not just have quit growing a while past, yet their populaces would have contracted. Movement is neither new, nor has it generally streamed a similar way. Until the 20th century, most travelers crossing the Mediterranean headed the other way, from north to south, from Europe to Africa, or the Middle East. They were going looking for favorable circumstance, or escaping, actually like today. Afro-Europeans allude to individuals in Europe who follow a full or fractional family line to sub-Saharan Africa. As nations, for example, Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, and Greece, have gotten practically zero movements from sub-Saharan Africa or cooperation that would have caused the development of dark or blended race networks. Dark populaces, comprehensive relatives, blended race individuals, and transitory understudies number less than 10,000 in every one of these states. For some Europeans, the term blended race infers a biracial encounter of having one parent dark and another white, or maybe one white and the other Asian. Tantamount additions have been found in different nations in which IQ testing has for a long while been comprehensively used, including other Western European countries. Similar improvements have been represented in semantic and indirect memory. Dangers of mixing blood and how these relate to magic soil theory. The well-being outcomes of a race blending among life forms could be non-partisan, valuable, or unsafe. For forever, individuals have been arranged into racial gatherings numbering from 3 to more than 50. In any case, there's been no agreement reached on the definition and utility of race as an idea and the organic meaning of racial classes across regular and sociology disciplines. The sequencing of the human genome has given both regular and social researchers the chance to acquire new information about the unpredictable connections between our socio-politically developed meanings of race, human hereditary variety, and well-being contrasts. Both race and nationality convey undertones that reflect culture, history, financial and political status, and a significant association with familial, geographic beginnings. People are hereditarily less assorted than numerous other mammalian species, including chimpanzees. It is hard to characterize human populaces of huge hereditary variety due to the clinical idea of our variety. Interracial marriage is a type of exogamy that comprises a marriage between companions who have a place with various races. There have all the earmarks of being some potential issues while outbreeding with a populace different from your own, yet in uncommon circumstances we are firmly related. However, some unique qualities are detached in specific populaces that don't blend when they come to contact with one another. We watch out for not notice these because, like most pregnancies, they bring out the unconstrained, unnatural birth cycle. Since 15 to 20% of pregnancies end in premature deliveries so early that the ladies don't typically even realize they are pregnant, these things are not explored, unquestionably, not a hereditary level. It excessively works severe and outrageous. The equivalent applies to individuals from populaces from which there is a decent lot of blood bunch variety. If a lady from a town in Norway of blood bunch O weds a man from a similar town of blood bunch A, regardless of whether they are cousins, she will have a similarly increased danger of premature delivery. There is nothing mysterious in the blood here, its specific hereditary qualities. The probability is a result of clear and particular elements. The sorcery soil hypothesis depends on where an individual resides, decides the individual's mental qualities. Such perspectives are regularly applied to transients, both among nations and inside nations, with a supposition that travelers or their relatives from inadequately working regions or populaces will expect the attributes of well-working regions by relocating. There is a boundless conviction that race blending is gainful by diminishing inbreeding. Be that as it may, the populace size expected to keep away from issues brought about by inbreeding is minor, and is much more modest if there is even a little hereditary trade with adjoining bunches from a similar race. All things being equal, there might be expanded dangers of adverse consequences for the two youngsters and the guardians, brought about by elements. For example, genetic outbreeding wretchedness. Didn't see that one coming. The expanded danger of relationship issues, remembering savagery and crime for interracial connections. Character issues for blended race youngsters by not having a place with any racial gathering. Social disengagement for blended race youngsters by not having a place with any racial gathering. Political help, advanced regulation, and expected anthropologists to naturally interface race with countries, for the most part through culture. Hence, actual human sciences framed control buildings with humanities subjects, offering them its common science distinction, yet disciplinary specializations constantly subverted these coalitions. The association of progressive ethnological, anthropological, radiological, and various less huge race grouping discipline buildings with homegrown political battles and academic debates about the association of sociology gave race characterization a violent history. Its many covering and collaborating topographical examples impacted by assortments of patriotism, level of modern and logical turn of events, ethno-social custom, and particularly by the nexus among governmental issues and science, were of further complexity.